Ethan Blake had never felt quite as out of place as he did the moment the massive shuttle docked with the Palace of Serelith. From the windows of the observation deck, he could see towers that seemed to float effortlessly above the lush green forests, linked by bridges of silver and crystal. The entire city pulsed with a strange, quiet energy, almost alive, yet perfectly orderly. He adjusted the straps of his envoy harness and tried to steady his breathing. Humans had always been seen as fragile by most alien civilizations, and he was acutely aware of how every step he took would be watched, judged, and perhaps even laughed at. The shuttle doors slid open with a hiss, revealing the marble landing platform. A figure awaited him, slender, almost ethereal, with skin that shimmered faintly in the ambient light and eyes that glowed like polished jade. She was surrounded by attendants, their expressions carefully neutral, but it was impossible to ignore the aura of authority she carried. Ethan bowed slightly, instinctively lowering his gaze in respect. "Welcome, Captain Blake," said the voice, soft yet commanding, resonating in a way that made him feel both small and noticed at the same time. "I am Princess Liara. I have been expecting you." This was personal. The princess of an entire alien planet had requested him specifically, a human, to teach her about human traditions. The very thought made his pulse quicken. He knew humans were often underestimated for their physical strength, technological development, or size, but traditions, culture, and the quiet power of connection, those were things humans excelled at, even if no alien had recognized it yet. "I am honored, Your Highness," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the hum of his heart. "I will do my best to represent humanity. I wish to experience them as a human would." The alien court was strict, formal, and often dismissive of human emotion. He would have to choose his lessons carefully, balancing intrigue with safety, depth with subtlety. They walked through the palace corridors, and Ethan couldn't help but marvel at the architecture. The walls seemed to flow like liquid silver, reflecting light in ways that made the halls appear endless. Intricate patterns shifted along the surfaces, responding to the movement of those who passed by. It was beautiful, yes, but alien in a way that reminded him that this was not Earth. Every step he took was a step deeper into the unknown. "So," Liara said, her voice bringing him back to the present, "what is the first tradition you would teach me?" He could have started with something simple, human greetings, music, food, but he sensed that Liara wanted more than the superficial. Humans were known for their creativity, adaptability, and the subtle ways they connected. Perhaps he could begin with something that was universally human, yet often overlooked by aliens: laughter. He smiled. "Laughter," he said, "is more than a sound. It is a bridge between people. It tells someone that you understand them, that you share a moment, that you are connected. It is one of the simplest and strongest human traditions." It was small at first, almost tentative, and then grew into a richer, fuller sound, one that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. Liara's gaze softened, and then unexpectedly she laughed too. It was not exactly like human laughter, her physiology was different, but it had the same effect. The sound vibrated with joy, with recognition, and Ethan felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. "That is remarkable," she said after a moment, still smiling. "It carries meaning beyond the words themselves. I can feel it. It is a way humans build bonds without needing complex machinery or data analysis." Liara listened, observed, and tried to mimic each gesture. Some were awkward, of course. Her limbs were longer, her fingers more delicate, but she smiled with delight at every success. The attendants and other nobles watched quietly. Ethan could sense the subtle whispers of disbelief. Humans were fragile, they thought. Their bodies were weaker, their technology less advanced, and yet here was one teaching an alien princess, guiding her through practices that seemed harmless but were incredibly intimate in human culture. He knew they didn't fully understand the strength required to build trust, to share moments openly, to teach someone the essence of connection. During the lessons, Ethan also noticed something about Liara that set her apart from her court. She wasn't merely curious, she was deeply engaged. She asked questions about why humans did certain things, what emotions drove them, and how traditions had survived through countless generations. She wanted more than surface knowledge, she wanted understanding. And Ethan realized that if he played his cards carefully, he could reveal something that would shock the alien court: the quiet power humans held in their traditions, in their ability to connect, adapt, and influence through empathy and understanding. By the end of the day, Liara had tried several human gestures and expressions, each one more personal than the last. They had shared stories of home, of childhood memories, of failures and small victories. Ethan felt the shift in the air. The alien nobles were no longer merely observing. They were calculating, evaluating, trying to understand what was happening. Humans were no longer just curiosities. Through laughter, stories, and shared experience, humans were asserting a subtle, undeniable presence. As night fell over Sarilith, the palace gardens glowed softly under the alien moonlight. Ethan and Liara walked among the bioluminescent plants, their paths winding like rivers of light. Liara stopped to examine a flower that pulsed gently, reacting to their movement. "Captain Blake," she said, her voice quiet, "there is something remarkable about humans. It is not in your strength, not in your weapons, nor even in your machines. It is in the way you connect with each other, in the way you understand, care, and share. I do not think my people see it. They think of humans as weak, fragile, or simple, but I feel something else. People see only what they can measure: muscle, speed, firepower. But the quiet things, the emotions, the trust, the traditions, those are where true power lies. If used wisely, they can shape worlds. I want to experience them as you do, as they are meant to be experienced." The lessons would grow deeper, more personal, and eventually they would challenge not only the princess but her entire court. As they returned to the palace, Ethan glanced back at the glowing gardens, the floating towers, and the orderly, watchful attendants. For the first time in his life, he felt that humans, through something as simple as laughter, stories, and shared traditions, could change not just the perception of one alien princess, but perhaps the course of interstellar relations itself. And somewhere deep in the palace, he sensed the quiet ripple of tension among the nobles. They did not yet know it, but humans were not just fragile creatures to be studied or ignored. They were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of connecting in ways no alien hierarchy could anticipate. And Captain Ethan Blake intended to show them exactly why. The next morning, Ethan woke to the quiet hum of the palace. The corridors were empty now, the attendants still preparing for the day's activities, yet he felt the weight of eyes unseen upon him. Teaching human traditions to an alien princess was not a casual task. Every gesture, every explanation carried meaning beyond the surface. It could inspire admiration or suspicion. Liara arrived promptly, her movements elegant and measured, yet there was a spark in her eyes that told Ethan she had been thinking about yesterday's lessons all night. "Captain Blake," she said, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and determination, "I have considered what you taught me. Laughter, gestures, stories, they are beautiful, but there must be more. Humans live not just by gestures. They have customs that bind them together, that show care, respect, and even courage. I want to know these." Sharing food is a central human tradition. It is about more than nutrition. It is about companionship, respect, and bonding. He had brought with him simple human ingredients, carefully preserved for this purpose, and the process of preparing the meal became the first real lesson. "Humans often cook together," Ethan explained as he washed his hands and prepared the ingredients. "It is not just about the food itself. The act of cooking requires communication, cooperation, patience. You learn about each other while creating something together." Ethan realized that her fascination with humans was not superficial. It was intellectual, emotional, and deeply personal. As they prepared the meal together, Ethan shared stories of human traditions associated with food, festive gatherings, communal feasts, and even the quiet ritual of sharing a simple bread with someone you care about. Liara listened intently, occasionally asking questions about why certain foods were chosen, why timing mattered, or how humans used these moments to show respect or celebrate milestones. "This is extraordinary," she said at one point, tasting a dish she had prepared herself. "It is more than nourishment. It is a way of expressing care, of creating trust." Every human tradition carries layers of meaning. The outer action may seem simple, but the emotional and social impact is immense. Through these small acts, humans maintain bonds that last lifetimes. Among her people, power and hierarchy were rigidly maintained, and vulnerability was rarely displayed. Here, in the quiet act of sharing a meal, she experienced something entirely new, something humans took for granted: the comfort and safety of mutual trust. Meanwhile, outside the private dining chamber, whispers circulated among the palace staff. Some watched with curiosity, others with unease. Humans were not known for their strength, nor for advanced alien technologies, but here one was teaching a princess in ways that seemed to challenge the very core of Sarilith's rigid societal norms. The quiet power of human tradition was already making ripples, even if the court did not fully understand it. After the meal, Ethan introduced Liara to another essential human tradition: music. He had brought with him a simple stringed instrument, something akin to a guitar, and he demonstrated the basics of rhythm and melody. Liara's ears, tuned to alien harmonics, initially struggled with the subtle variations in tone, yet she persisted, guided by Ethan's patience and encouragement. Music, Ethan explained, was not just entertainment. Humans used music to communicate emotion, to celebrate, to grieve, and to unite. Through song, humans could express what words alone could not convey. Liara's attempts were hesitant at first, but as she played, she began to understand the nuances. The notes carried feeling, not just sound, and for the first time she realized that humans wielded emotion as skillfully as they did technology. "You see," Ethan said, watching her, "humans connect through shared experiences. Music, stories, meals, they are all part of the same thread. They weave individuals together into communities that can endure anything. It is a strength I did not expect from your people." He explained how even humor, jokes, and playful teasing were traditions that reinforced connection, trust, and social cohesion. Throughout it all, Liara participated eagerly. Her laughter was no longer just mimicry, it was genuine. Her questions were increasingly insightful. And with each lesson, Ethan noticed a subtle shift. She was beginning to challenge the formal, rigid mindset she had grown up with. She was seeing the value in vulnerability, trust, and emotional honesty, concepts alien to most of her court. As the day drew to a close, Ethan sensed tension creeping into the palace. Some attendants had been listening from a distance. Whispers of doubt and suspicion had begun to circulate among the staff and lower-ranked nobles. Humans were fragile, they said. They could not possibly influence the royal family. And yet here was one human, quietly changing the way the princess thought, acted, and understood the world. Ethan was aware of the potential danger. He had to tread carefully. Teaching humans emotional traditions was delicate work. Too much too fast could alarm the court. But he also knew that subtle influence could be more powerful than any weapon. The lessons he gave were not merely cultural, they were strategic. By showing Liara the depth and strength of human connection, he was planting seeds that could reshape perceptions of humanity itself. When the evening arrived, Liara invited Ethan to walk with her through the palace gardens. The bioluminescent flora glowed softly under the twin moons, their light reflecting off the delicate streams that wound between the trees. It was a serene place, and for a moment the tensions of teaching, diplomacy, and alien scrutiny seemed to fade. "You have shown me much today," Liara said softly. "I see now that humans are not simple. You are strong in ways my people cannot measure. You use your minds, your hearts, and your connections to influence and survive. It is unlike anything I have encountered. We may not be the fastest or the strongest, but we endure because we understand each other and the value of trust. Traditions are our tools to maintain that understanding. I want to experience them fully, as a human would." Liara was not merely curious. She was thoughtful, analytical, and capable of understanding nuance. She was also bold, willing to embrace new ideas without fear of judgment. This combination was rare, and it gave him confidence. If he guided her correctly, she could become an ally not only to humanity, but to the idea that humans were more than the galaxy had ever expected. The palace walls, which had seemed imposing and cold in the morning, now felt different. They were still alien, still formidable, but within them a new current was moving, subtle, invisible, but undeniable. Human influence, gentle and quiet, was beginning to weave its way through Sarilith. By the time the stars hung high above the gardens, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. The lessons so far had been simple, yet powerful. The next stages would require greater care, deeper trust, and a willingness to reveal the most intimate aspects of human culture. But he also knew that if anyone could handle it, it was Liara. And if anyone could show the galaxy that humans were more than fragile, it was her, guided by him. As they returned to the palace, Liara glanced back at the gardens, her eyes lingering on the softly glowing streams. "Tomorrow," she said, "we go deeper. I want to understand how humans build trust, how you share more than words, how you create bonds that cannot be broken. Then tomorrow we begin something that will surprise more than just your court. Humans have ways of connecting that can change minds and hearts. And you, Princess Liara, will see them fully for the first time." The lessons had begun to ripple outward. Humans, fragile as they were thought to be, were quietly asserting a presence that no one could ignore. And Ethan Blake was at the center of it all, the teacher of traditions that carried more power than the court could yet comprehend. Tomorrow, the lessons would deepen. Tomorrow, humans would show the first hints of their quiet, intimate strength. And tomorrow, Sarilith would begin to see that there was far more to humanity than any alien had ever imagined. The morning light filtered gently through the towering windows of the palace, painting the hallways in soft streaks of green and gold. Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and careful caution as he prepared for the day ahead. Today was different. Yesterday's lessons had been about observation, laughter, meals, music, introductions to human ways. Today, Liara had requested the most intimate traditions, those that carried weight not just in practice, but in meaning in the bonds they created between humans. When Liara arrived, she was more alert than usual, her expression bright but serious. "I have thought much about what you taught yesterday," she said. "I see the power in connection, in shared experience. Today, I wish to go deeper. Show me what humans consider the most personal, the most revealing of themselves." He knew that humans had traditions far beyond what an alien court would understand, rituals of trust, storytelling that revealed vulnerability, shared confidences that bound people together. These were practices humans used to build relationships stronger than any weapon or shield, and teaching them required care. "Very well," he said. "Today we will explore human traditions that are not just actions, but expressions of the soul. They show who we are when no one else is watching. They are about trust, vulnerability, and understanding. They are the most intimate parts of human culture." The space was meant to feel safe, private, and removed from the gaze of the court. Even the air seemed calmer here, allowing a sense of ease and security to settle. "Humans," Ethan began, "often share personal stories with each other. Not public tales, not heroic deeds, but experiences that reveal who they are, their fears, their dreams, their mistakes. This is called confiding. It is one of the deepest forms of connection. When someone trusts you with their personal truth, it creates a bond that is very strong. It allows us to form alliances, friendships, and partnerships that endure. It is one of the reasons we survive and thrive even in difficult circumstances." Liara watched him closely, her expression thoughtful, absorbing every detail. There was no judgment in her gaze, only curiosity and respect. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "I understand. By revealing your weakness, you show trust, and the one who listens honors that trust. You may share something personal, something that reveals who you are without fear. It does not need to be a secret. It is simply a moment of connection." She shared memories from her childhood, times when she had felt isolated despite her royal status, moments when expectations weighed heavily on her. She spoke of the pressure to maintain perfection, the loneliness of responsibility, and the rare instances when she had longed for friendship without pretense. Ethan listened, offering small gestures of encouragement. He did not interrupt, did not judge, simply allowed her to express herself fully. When she finished, there was a silence not awkward but full of meaning. The act of sharing had created an invisible bond between them, a bridge of trust that was stronger than any diplomacy. "You see," Ethan said gently, "humans use these moments to build bonds that cannot be broken. It is not weakness to share. It is courage, and through these bonds we create strength that others often underestimate. It feels real." Each activity was designed to elicit honesty, introspection, and trust. Liara engaged eagerly, her natural curiosity blending with a growing comfort. She experimented with the tasks, creating expressions that were raw and revealing, surprising even herself with what she uncovered. The exercises deepened the connection between them. Ethan noticed a transformation in her demeanor. She was more relaxed, more authentic, more willing to challenge her own preconceptions. The palace attendants and lower-ranking nobles began to notice changes as well. Though they could not see the private sessions, whispers of the princess's altered behavior spread. She was more contemplative, more approachable, and less rigid in her interactions. Some nobles were unsettled. They did not understand the subtle influence humans could wield through trust and connection. Ethan continued, guiding Liara through the practice of confessional storytelling, a deeply human tradition where individuals take turns sharing personal experiences while others listen without judgment. The listener offers empathy, questions, or reflections, but never criticism. It is a practice designed to strengthen bonds, encourage understanding, and build resilience. As Liara shared her stories, Ethan listened attentively, occasionally offering his own reflections. The sessions became more profound as the day progressed. They discussed moments of fear, failure, hope, and triumph. Every exchange revealed the depth of human emotional intelligence, the capacity to form bonds through honesty and trust, and the subtle power humans could wield without the need for force or technology. The lessons began to ripple outward. Word of the princess's newfound openness and emotional engagement reached higher-ranking members of the court. Some were intrigued, others skeptical. They began to question the value of Ethan's teachings. How could a human, so physically frail compared to the Ceralithian elite, wield such influence over the royal family? They could not grasp that the strength Ethan demonstrated was cultural, emotional, and strategic, not physical. By mid-afternoon, Ethan introduced one more tradition, the practice of ritualized gratitude. Humans often expressed appreciation for others in deliberate, meaningful ways, through words, gestures, and shared experiences. It was a practice that reinforced trust, honor, and respect, and it created loyalty that lasted a lifetime. Liara embraced this tradition fully. She expressed gratitude not only to Ethan but to the process itself, acknowledging her own growth and the courage required to share openly. Ethan noted how the simple act of expressing gratitude strengthened her presence, deepened their connection, and subtly challenged the hierarchy of the palace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the palace in shades of violet and silver, Ethan and Liara walked through the gardens once more. The air was filled with the soft hum of alien nocturnal life, yet the energy between them was human, warm, and alive. "You have shown me more than I expected," Liara said, her voice quiet but full of conviction. "These traditions, trust, shared stories, vulnerability, gratitude, they are powerful. I see now that humans are not weak. They are strong in ways my people do not understand, ways that cannot be measured by technology or status. Others may overlook it, but it is no less real than any weapon or shield." Teaching the most intimate human traditions was not just about culture, it was about empowerment. By showing Liara the depth of human connection, he was revealing a strength her people could not yet comprehend. If guided carefully, this knowledge could change perceptions of humanity across Seralith, and perhaps beyond. As they returned to the palace, Ethan sensed the undercurrent of tension growing among the court. The whispers, the looks of doubt and suspicion, all signaled that humans were beginning to disrupt expectations. The court did not yet understand the quiet, intimate power of human traditions, but they would soon. Ethan knew the next lessons would be even more profound. Human intimacy, trust, and connection could shift alliances, reshape perceptions, and challenge entire hierarchies. He also knew that Liara was ready. She had embraced vulnerability, engaged fully with the traditions, and begun to internalize the principles that made humans resilient, adaptable, and unexpectedly powerful. That night, as the twin moons rose over Seralith, casting soft silver light over the palace, Ethan reflected on the day. The lessons had gone deeper than he had dared hope. Liara was not merely a student. She was becoming a bridge between species, a living demonstration of humanity's strength in ways the court could neither dismiss nor control. Tomorrow, he thought, the challenges would grow. The lessons would become more complex, more revealing, and more influential. Humans were not just fragile observers in the galaxy. They were teachers, guides, and bearers of subtle, transformative power. And with Liara as his ally, they would show the universe exactly what that meant. The palace was quiet now, but Ethan knew that the ripples of today's lessons had already begun. The alien court would notice the changes, and some would resist. But others, he suspected, would begin to understand, slowly, reluctantly, and ultimately with awe, that humans were far stronger, more adaptable, and more influential than anyone had imagined. And Captain Ethan Blake was at the center of it all, guiding not just a princess, but the perception of an entire civilization with the most powerful weapons humans possessed: trust, connection, and the courage to be vulnerable. The palace was unusually tense that morning. Ethan had expected whispers, curious glances, and subtle skepticism from the attendants and lower-ranking nobles. But today, he could sense a stronger current, unease that ran through the halls like a live wire. Liara's engagement with human traditions had already begun to challenge the rigid hierarchy of Seralith. Some members of the court were uneasy with how open and confident she had become, while others were quietly intrigued, unable to ignore the changes. Ethan met Liara in the private chamber, the space prepared for today's lessons. The room was calm, soft light reflecting off the walls in gentle patterns, and cushions were arranged in a wide circle. Today's session would go further than simple stories or shared meals. Today, Ethan intended to show her, and indirectly the court, the full power of human connection. Liara's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "I am ready," she said. "Yesterday, I felt the strength of human trust and vulnerability. Today, I want to see how humans face fear, disagreement, and challenge. I want to understand the traditions that make you resilient, even when confronted with danger or opposition. These practices create bonds stronger than steel." Ethan guided her through the first attempts, showing her how humans relied not just on individual skill, but on communication, observation, and mutual support. As Liara progressed, she realized that success required more than intelligence or precision. She had to anticipate Ethan's actions, trust his guidance, and respond without hesitation. At first, she struggled, faltering along the narrow paths, but Ethan's encouragement and careful instruction allowed her to regain confidence. The exercise was not merely physical, it was emotional and mental. It demanded focus, trust, and the willingness to reveal weakness and rely on another. "This is fascinating," Liara said, pausing at a turn. "Humans succeed by leaning on one another. Even when faced with difficulty, you build strength through cooperation, not dominance. It is so different from the way my people operate. This is why we endure in ways others often underestimate." He had watched Liara grow more confident, more open, and more assertive, and it unsettled him. To his mind, a human teaching the princess, even in harmless traditions, was a threat to their hierarchy. Sareth summoned a few senior nobles, whispering urgently. "This human has gone too far," he said. "The princess is changing. She is no longer bound by protocol or caution. He has introduced concepts of trust and vulnerability that are foreign to our people. We cannot allow this influence to continue unchecked." Ethan demonstrated by presenting a hypothetical dispute between two humans over resources, encouraging Liara to mediate, ask questions, and guide the resolution. Liara engaged fully, analyzing each perspective and asking questions that revealed not just understanding, but wisdom. "Humans resolve conflict not by overpowering, but by understanding," she observed. "You do not seek dominance, you seek cooperation. It is clever, subtle, and far stronger than force alone. Trust, empathy, and understanding are the tools of power humans often wield quietly. This practice built respect, accountability, and mutual understanding, all of which strengthened social bonds." Liara reflected on this thoughtfully. "In my court, mistakes are hidden or punished. There is no room for vulnerability, but here, honesty builds respect. It creates a bond. I see why humans survive challenges my people could never endure alone." With every interaction, Liara's understanding deepened, and her confidence in applying these traditions in daily life grew. Outside the chamber, Sareth and his allies had gathered. They watched from hidden observation points, their faces tight with unease. "She is learning far too quickly," Sareth muttered. "This human is teaching her to trust and think independently. It is dangerous. We must intervene before it is too late." The stories were not heroic exploits or tales of conquest, but deeply personal moments: fear, loss, hope, and triumph. Liara listened intently, then responded with her own experiences, weaving her narrative with honesty and reflection. The act of sharing created a tangible bond between them, one that radiated trust, respect, and mutual understanding. It was a powerful display of human emotional strength, quiet, subtle, yet undeniably potent. The palace corridors hummed with whispers as servants and junior nobles passed by. Some were amazed, some fearful. No one could fully articulate what they saw, but everyone felt it. Humans were not weak. Their strength lay not in muscle, technology, or status, but in the capacity to connect, empathize, and influence through trust and tradition. As evening approached, the situation reached its peak tension. Sareth and a group of senior advisors formally confronted Liara. "Your Highness," Sareth began, his voice controlled but firm, "these private lessons with the human are dangerous. They encourage ideas alien to our culture, weaken your authority, and disrupt protocol. You must end them immediately. His teachings are not threats, they are insights. They have shown me strength, wisdom, and the value of trust. I will continue to learn from him." He had anticipated resistance, and he understood that this confrontation was a test, not just for Liara, but for the perception of humanity itself. Sareth pressed further. "Your Highness, this human is teaching you to question tradition, to value feelings over duty. It is subversive. You risk the stability of the palace, the respect of the court, and the order of Sarilith. Captain Blake's lessons have shown me a way to lead that is not weak," but resilient. I will not abandon what I have learned, nor will I disregard its value. Yet here was proof human traditions, trust, vulnerability, empathy could influence even the most rigid alien hierarchy. Sarath finally turned, defeated but seething. "This is not over," he said quietly. "But you should know, Your Highness, the court is watching. I will trust what I have learned, and I will continue to grow with it." They spent the remainder of the evening in reflection, discussing the lessons learned, the insights gained, and the potential for what these traditions could achieve. Ethan knew that the ripple effect was already underway. The court had witnessed subtle changes in behavior, leadership, and perception. Some would resist, but others would begin to see the truth. Humans were not fragile. They were strong in ways the galaxy had yet to comprehend. By nightfall, the palace was quiet, but the impact of the day lingered. Ethan realized that they had reached a turning point. Humans, through the careful teaching of their most intimate traditions, had begun to redefine power in the eyes of Sarilith. It was no longer about status, strength, or technology. It was about connection, trust, and understanding. As Liara prepared for rest, she turned to Ethan. "Tomorrow, we continue. I want to learn how humans maintain this strength over time, how you sustain bonds, overcome fear, and face challenges together. I want to see the full spectrum of what it means to be human. You are beginning to understand why." And the galaxy, through the eyes of Princess Liara, was starting to see humans in a way it never had before. The next morning, Sarilith was quiet, yet the air buzzed with subtle tension. Word of Princess Liara's lessons with Ethan had traveled through the palace, and the nobles were restless. Some were still skeptical, unable to grasp why a human, so physically unassuming, could influence the princess so profoundly. Others, however, could not ignore the change. Liara's confidence, poise, and openness were undeniable, and it made even the most rigid courtiers pause and reconsider. Ethan prepared for the day with careful thought. Today's lesson would be the culmination of everything they had learned. The full spectrum of human traditions that bound people together, created resilience, and allowed them to face challenges that seemed insurmountable. He knew that this was more than education. This was a demonstration of humanity itself, quietly asserting its presence across alien space. Liara arrived in the private chamber, her expression calm but resolute. "Captain Blake," she said, "I am ready to see the full measure of what humans do, how they maintain strength over time, and how they sustain bonds that endure even in hardship. Teach me so that I may understand completely." Humans use these practices to reinforce loyalty, trust, and responsibility. They are not flashy or violent, but they create bonds that withstand challenges far greater than any physical confrontation. By committing to shared goals and promises, humans develop networks of support that are incredibly resilient. They designed hypothetical scenarios where humans had to depend on one another to survive, solve problems, or achieve goals. Through discussion, planning, and role-playing, Liara learned how trust could be cultivated intentionally, strengthened through repeated cooperation, and maintained even when circumstances grew difficult. Each step emphasized communication, patience, and understanding, the subtle yet formidable tools humans wielded. "You see," Ethan said as they worked through the exercises, "humans are not strong because of their bodies or weapons. We are strong because we form bonds that others underestimate, because we can trust, forgive, and cooperate. That is how we survive against challenges that would destroy many civilizations. It is earned, maintained, and shared." Liara embraced these rituals eagerly. She acknowledged the lessons she had learned with gratitude, reflecting on how they had already transformed her perspective. She began applying the practices naturally, thanking Ethan for guidance, recognizing the growth she had achieved, and reflecting on how these lessons could benefit her people. Meanwhile, the palace court continued to observe from a distance. The shifts in Liara's behavior were now impossible to ignore. She had grown more assertive, more thoughtful, and more capable of making decisions that balanced power with empathy. Those who had doubted her transformation began to reconsider their assumptions. Humans, they realized, had taught her something profound, something that changed not only her perspective but also the dynamics of leadership within the court. Ethan and Liara moved on to another human practice: conflict resolution and negotiation through empathy and dialogue. They explored hypothetical disputes, first within human contexts, then applying them to alien society. Liara quickly grasped the principles, listening carefully, validating perspectives, and finding common ground. She applied them to scenarios in Seralith, imagining how she could lead her people while maintaining fairness, trust, and unity. "This is powerful," Liara said after a session. "I can see how humans maintain stability without fear or domination. You do it with understanding, not threats. You wield influence subtly, yet effectively. This is a kind of strength my people rarely achieve. And when used wisely, they can change entire societies." Liara participated fully, internalizing the lessons and beginning to envision how she could apply these practices in her court. Outside, Serath and the faction of dissenting nobles watched with growing unease. The princess, once considered bound by tradition, was now transformed. Her demeanor reflected confidence, insight, and strength, qualities she had gained through human teachings. They could not dismiss it, and they could not control it. The influence of humanity was real, tangible, and undeniable. By evening, Ethan and Liara prepared for the final lesson, shared storytelling combined with reflection on personal growth. They sat in the chamber, cushions arranged in a circle, and recounted experiences from the week, the challenges, discoveries, fears, and triumphs. Liara shared her reflections on her own growth, acknowledging how the lessons had changed her understanding of leadership, empathy, and connection. Ethan added his perspective, showing how humans continually learn from one another and from experience, creating networks of wisdom that span generations. "You have taught me much," Liara said, her voice steady and full of conviction. "I see now that humans possess a strength my people do not fully understand. It is quiet, subtle, and deeply effective. It is a strength built not on fear or dominance, but on trust, understanding, and connection. I will carry these lessons forward not just for myself, but for my people. We survive, thrive, and influence because we understand the value of connection, trust, and shared purpose. You have learned it quickly, and you will continue to grow. Your people will benefit from this knowledge in ways that no one can yet predict." Some were skeptical still, but even they could not deny the transformation in Liara's approach to leadership. Humans, through the teaching of intimate traditions, had altered perceptions, challenged assumptions, and quietly asserted influence that extended beyond the chamber. As night fell, Ethan and Liara walked through the glowing palace gardens. The bioluminescent flora shimmered softly under the twin moons, casting reflections that seemed almost magical. Liara spoke, her voice quiet but determined. "Tomorrow I will begin to share these traditions with my people. I will show them the value of trust, empathy, and connection. Humans have shown me a strength that is subtle yet profound. It is time others see it as well." She spoke with clarity, calmness, and authority, sharing the principles she had learned from Ethan, the value of trust, the importance of empathy, the power of vulnerability, and the strength of connection. She emphasized that leadership was not about fear, domination, or rigid hierarchy. It was about understanding, guiding, and inspiring. The court was stunned. Some resisted, clinging to traditional views, but many were inspired. They saw the transformation in Liara, and through her words, they began to perceive the subtle power humans had demonstrated. Humans were no longer just fragile beings to be dismissed. They were teachers of resilience, connection, and influence. Ethan watched quietly, satisfied. The lessons had reached far beyond the private chamber. The ripple effect was real. Through the intimate traditions of humanity, the princess had learned to see strength differently, and in doing so, she had begun to change her world. As weeks passed, Liara implemented human-inspired practices throughout Seralith. She encouraged open dialogue, shared celebrations, and recognition of individual contributions. She fostered empathy among her advisors and promoted cooperation over competition. The palace began to shift, slowly but unmistakably, reflecting the subtle influence of human culture. Ethan remained at her side, guiding and advising, but increasingly he noticed that Liara had internalized the lessons. She no longer needed constant guidance. She had become a living example of human principles applied in an alien context. Her confidence, resilience, and insight demonstrated that humans were not weak, but strong in ways the galaxy had underestimated. The ripple effect extended beyond the palace. Word of Liara's transformation reached other planets and colonies. Humans were being noticed, not for their technology or physicality, but for their wisdom, their culture, and their capacity to influence through connection. The reputation of humanity in the galaxy began to shift, as stories of their subtle, intimate strength spread quietly but steadily. One evening, Ethan and Liara walked again through the palace gardens, reflecting on the journey. "You have learned well," Ethan said. You understand the essence of human strength, and you are already teaching it to others. That is the true power of what we do, quiet, relational, transformative. I will carry these lessons forward for all of Seralith. The twin moons rose higher, casting their silver light over the glowing gardens. Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. Humans had shown that strength could take many forms, not just brute force or advanced technology, but the quiet, enduring power of culture, connection, and trust. Through the princess, their influence had taken root in a way that would shape generations. And as he watched Liara walk confidently among the glowing flora, smiling and speaking with clarity and compassion to her advisors, Ethan knew the galaxy would never underestimate humans again. Not their resilience, not their ingenuity, and certainly not their capacity to shape worlds through the most intimate, powerful traditions of all.